What is up, everybody? We got an exciting live stream today. So many people have been asking about how does client-first fluid responsive stack up to Wizardry Method by Timothy Ricks. And we've avoided answering any of those questions over the last few live streams because we knew we were working on the content we were gonna release today, and we wanted to do that all at kind of one time. So say hi, Joe. What are we gonna talk about today? And again, we've got Alex on the side here. So we're gonna get technical, allow the audience to ask questions all about it, but we're gonna run through this article, Joe. So give us a little preview of what's coming up right now.
Yes, we are going to present client first, fluid responsive versus wizardry. We're going deep into accessibility. That's the objective part of this stream. It's all fact-based, based on accessibility practices. So we'll be talking a lot about browser zoom. We'll be talking a lot about default browser font size. Before we do that, we actually have a really cool announcement for you. We're going to give you a little sneak peek preview of something really juicy we're working on with Client First. And I'll let Alex take that away. Alex, what are we doing here?
Hey, sure. Let me know if I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, go for it.
We have a new module for the extension. This module is going to help you understand how your project it's built and it's organized with your CSS classes, and you're going to have some features that are going to help you in that. It's not yet released, but we have a sneak peek for you. So when you go in the extension, soon you will find a new project classes. Maybe I can zoom in so you can see better. A new project classes module. It is going to show you an overview of all your classes, but in a folder structure. There's a reason behind this, and we'll get more into this soon, not today, but your project, if you're using client first naming, it's easy to organize and to understand. So this module is going to help you have an overview, which it's going to allow you open the folders to see exactly how everything is classified. You will be able to rename classes from here. You'll be able to rename classes from here. You'll be able to rename entire folders from here, which is one of the cool things that you'll be able to do. You'll be able to search for classes, which is something that people has been wanting for a long time. And you'll be able to see information about the classes and the folders and what where are being used, like the regular styles manager. Something that it's not in here, but you'll also be able to do is to see right away the CSS code, valid CSS code, not the one that's shown in the CSS beta preview from Webflow, which is not valid CSS that you can copy and paste directly somewhere else. You'll be able to do it in here. And you'll have a preview of all your utility classes that somehow are being used. It's single classes or combo classes. But yeah, this is the main overview that I can show you right now.
Nice. Yeah, nice. And I think we'll do a little bit deeper dive at the end of the show for anybody who's hanging with us. At the end of the stream, we'll jump in and maybe get into this a little deeper, depending on the time and the interest from everybody who's in the crowd today. So real quick, like we usually do, let's say what's up to a couple folks that are in the audience with us. Let's see, we got Joseph Bates in the house from Southern Utah. What's up, Rohan? Magdalena is in the house. Sam Harrison. Fife, what's up? Vlad is here. Vlad Skripchenko. I gotta make sure I keep saying Vlad. People are gonna start thinking maybe Vlad Magdalene is in the streams, but maybe he is. Who knows? Anthony in the background. Felix, what's up? Eric Freeland. Isaac is here. Demetrius Dale. Gabe Perez. What's up? Eve Kaiser in the house. Slavik. Jay Poucher. Marcelo. Philip Trott, back-to-back presentations. I'm feeling spoiled. Yeah, we have a lot of fun on these streams. So maybe, one day we're going to get the daily streams or something like that. Tommy Gunn is saying, Timothy made it accessible now. Did he? We will cover that today. I think we will talk a little bit about all of that. So yeah, there were some updates. We will cover those updates and also talk about other things that are there to consider. So Maggie is here. What's up, Maggie? Alan, Anto, Arianto. Hey, happy belated birthday to Anto in the house. What's up, Aida? Thomas is here. Penny in the house. What's up? What's up? Vimalan, Maria, Pixelita. Woof, man, there's so many. And we might get a spike. Yesterday, we ended up with like 180 people watching the stream. Let's see what's happening today. If we get the same spike, Richard Torres, what's up? Mirella, hello, Vlad. All right. That's enough. Let's get into it. So we're basically just going to go through this article that we released. Is this thing live yet? Oh, I guess I should show my screen, huh? Okay, so this article is live. Joe, you want to tell people where to get this thing here?
Yes, absolutely. I will be sharing it in the chat, and you can go and follow along with us. It is a live public article.
Great. So as soon as he posts that, okay. Yep, I think we're back. Audio should be good. I think maybe y'all need me to refresh the... Nope, you guys have the video, right? You guys are seeing the video? And I think
yep.
I think we're back on YouTube. Yep, I think we're back on YouTube. So Timothy DDoS them, yeah. Okay, no, I think we're back. Not sure what happening there, if that was like an internet spike or a internet drop or what, but we should be back and good to go. Looks like we're back live on the stream. So let's just jump right back into this here right from the top.
Great. Okay. First, we are comparing Wizardry, which is a responsive technique using EM that scales like VW, but with a max width. And Client First has a responsive technique that uses REM for all project scaling. Reimar, can you do me a favor and refresh that page? We have to make this part of the stream.
Yes. Okay. Boom.
Client First Fluid Responsive. This is a responsive technique that uses REMs for all project scaling. So we'll be talking about these different values. We'll be talking about the difference between them, and then we'll get into how they work in the systems. And our disclaimer for the video is we are Finsweet. We are the creators of Client First. We are comparing our system with somebody else's system. This is not done by a third party. However, the most important parts of this article are objective based. In the beginning, we're going to break out a little bit into subjective, but then we're going to stop subjective and we're going to get right into objective. This is all about the facts. But let's first jump into the subjective part of the article. I can take this. This is, we're not going to read this. You have the content in front of you. This content is saying that our team at Finsweet does not like Wizardry. We have respect for Timothy Ricks, but as a team, unanimously, we reject the Wizardry method for a number of reasons. And a lot of those we are going to outline exactly today. So if we scroll down a little bit, we believe that lowering the Webflow learning curve is crucial for bringing new users onto the platform. This is something we're very passionate about at Finsweet. We have attributes, lowering the learning curve to implement a filter. We have Client First, lowering the learning curve to just start using Webflow. And for a first-time Webflow user, the building style of a Webflow project can be the difference of loving or hating Webflow as a platform. This is such a powerful statement for me. I remember when I jumped into Webflow, it was very helpful to jump into a website that I could start using, that I could start interacting with. And this is something we want to do in Client First. This is a mission of Finsweet as a company. And if we scroll down a little bit, we will see that, yeah, we explain how Client First lowers the learning curve. And as we continue, we talk about how we think that Wizardry is increasing the learning curve, that in order to work on a Webflow project built using the Wizardry method, the developer must first learn Wizardry. I would imagine it very hard for a first-time Webflow user to go into a Wizardry project and start using it quickly. There is a curve to understand how this works. Once you understand how it works, you can build in it, you can edit it, you can build new pages. But if you don't know it, there's a break there.
Yeah.
And that's one of our core problems with the system.
Can I make a little point here too? Because I remember when Client First first came out, hearing a take from Timothy Ricks that he wasn't necessarily interested in his clients getting into the back end of his projects, right? Which is a totally, like, I get that. That's an approach. You're building boutique websites for clients who have no need or interest in getting into the back end. That's a completely different situation, right? That's like a different use case altogether. Those style sites are always going to be managed by a Webflow professional. The style of sites that we're talking about here and where Client First really makes a value proposition to the user is for those sites that do need to be handed over to a marketing team. It is the majority of us who are building sites that then need to be handed off to somebody else who maybe hopes to use Webflow moving forward, or who maybe hopes to, you know, make and update and maintain the site on their own, or maybe has a large team that needs to get into that site with multiple people. So it's not just one person. And so that's really like a differentiation that I want to show here, is that like your use case may be the first, right? You may be in a situation where you don't do that, where you don't hand off your sites and everything you do, you build, you manage, you own. And in that case, maybe this is not a problem. But for those of you who are trying to scale, which a lot of you are, who are watching the growth streams and kind of paying attention to what we're doing here, this is something that may come in, especially as you're talking about this learning curve over time with handing these projects off to bigger teams. So anyway, that's all I'll clear up there.
I would like to extend that to all sites, not just the marketing sites. You always have to build a Webflow website with the intention that somebody else is going to access that website in the future. Just because you build it and just because professionals will touch it at every step doesn't mean that professional knows the process. So with our goal in Client First is, even if you've never looked at Client First before, professional, beginner, you're going to have a lot of context and a lot of information to access that site, regardless of which type of site it is. Now, on the Wizardry side, you really have to understand that. You could be a Webflow user for 6 or 7 years. You cannot just go into a Wizardry project and get it. So I need to say this is site-wide. It doesn't matter what type of site this is building. Client First is all about being really allowing for the project to be accessed by anybody.
Yeah. And I'd like to encourage the audience here to challenge us in the comments. Like, if you have a question, if we missed something, if you think this is like, you know, there's something that we're like overlooking here, like, you know, like we're always get into these comments here and have time for y'all to share and get interactive with us. So if there's something here that you know, you'd like further explanation on, or that you have a question about, feel free to leave it in the comments. And Felix is bringing up a good point here to that end. What I don't like about Wizardry is that it end up with font sizes like 0.82532, whatever EMs there. Might be cool for a landing page, but having a full site with these values doesn't sound fun. So yeah, those are the kind of things. And we're going to discuss a lot of that. We're going to talk about these different things and how not only affects accessibility, but the complexity of the site as we go forward. So let's jump into the next little section here.
And let's
go ahead, Joe.
So yeah, and we're almost done with the subjective part. I'm looking to get to the facts here, the overviews. No, but let's just go up a little bit. Just this one list I want to go over. These are the things that you have to understand when going into this type of project. How does EMs work in the project? Why is the body set the body font in VW? How does this interact with the project? How do parent relationships work with EM? What is the artboard size? How do I change it? How do I use this calculator for every new size calculation? And what are the scripts that are available to use in the project? And what do the scripts do? Once you understand all of these answers, you can then start using Wizardry very fluidly. But these are the requirement knowledge points to go into the system. So, okay, let's go down to the final thoughts here. And Finsweet's final thoughts: we believe that if an end result can be achieved through simpler means, then we should take that path. And this is the subjective part. This is what we feel. Now we're going to step away from all of the emotion, and we're getting right into the facts. Let's start overviewing these systems. Let's start to see what these different values mean, how they work, and then we get into the accessibility implications.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people are, you know, just bringing up some good points here. Mirella saying, never tried Wizardry, so it's interesting to hear this. Most of my clients will touch the project at some point and needs to be scalable and comprehensive. This is it, right? This is the value that Webflow brings to the game. working with Wizardry is very much akin to like custom code. You're building a boutique website. It's something that like a developer needs to handle that kind of removes some of what the value of no code and Webflow brings to the table in our mind, which goes back to that lowering the learning curve here. And the great design lead, usually when I talk to clients about Webflow, it's the first thing they've heard of it. Their biggest concern is, will they be dependent on me to make updates? Exactly. So this is a big concern for lots of clients. And so again, one of the reasons why we're pointing this out here. Okay, so now we get into the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay, I'll explain these examples. Wizardry has multiple options to implement, and you can open up these. We have videos showing our tests in these. You can open up these and follow along with these tests. But we have, yes.
Joe, I just want to point out, there are multiple ways of implementing Wizardry. There's just one way of implementing Wizardry, but to make the system accessible, Wizardry offers different solutions because the system is not accessible out of the box.
Yep. Okay. That is a much better way to put it. Do you want to take these definitions?
No. You can go. You can go ahead. You were doing fine.
Okay. So option 1 to make Wizardry accessible uses JavaScript to set the body to the correct rem font size on each screen width. Our tests show browser font size success, browser zoom not success, failure.
And you can see here, I am zooming. Let's see. When I got to 200%, it did pop up. So after 200% and 250, I'm getting scaling. But as I go through, this is 100%, 110, 125, 150, 175, 200, I finally get a pop-up. So I'm not sure if there's something overriding that at a higher level, but yeah, it's not respecting that.
We'll dive deep.
Yep.
We'll dive deeper into these later.
We showed the full tests. And then option 2 to make it accessible changes the font body size. Reimer, can we go back to that?
Oh, yeah.
Changes the body font size to a fixed rem unit when the user zooms. And on this one, we have the browser font settings failing with the browser zoom at a success. And then last, option 3 uses on-screen controls to adjust the body font size, and that failed in both categories for us. And then, of course, we will compare client first, option 1, and option 2. And with client first, option 1 is with fluid responsive. This is with our CSS snippet on the page, success for both font settings and browser zoom. And then option 2, without fluid responsive. And this is also a success. So we want to show that client first, it's accessible by default. And with the fluid responsive method, it retains its accessibility practices.
Nice.
And that's it.
Great. Okay, so I think at this point, do we want to look at how those were behaving any further here on these examples, or should we just let people kind of explore those on their own?
People can explore it, and as we go through the article, we go through these exactly. Okay. This is just the overview. Great. We don't stop here.
Great. Okay, so let's jump in an overview and kind of give people like a high level view of each of the systems, and then we'll jump into the accessibility stuff here on the sidebar.
Sure. Alex, do you want to cover this, or you want me to cover this?
Yeah, fine. Well, the Wizardry overview, the way that the system works, if you're not familiar with it, is that instead of updating any global root font size and reacting to it, Wizardry just updates the body. And the body is set to 1VW. This 1VW means 1% of the total screen width, right? And this means that depending on the size of your screen, this value is going to be different. And then the entire project, it's set using EMs, right? And from this, we can see a bunch of things. Yeah, thank you. The system is not accessible out of the box, and this is something that it's not new. Even Timothy Ricks already has a video about that. Because when using VW as the font size, this font size, it's always going to rely on the screen size. It doesn't matter if you're zooming in. It doesn't matter if you change your browser font settings. It doesn't matter, because this unit is just about the screen size. And out of the box, you cannot, it's not accessible. So there are 3 different JavaScript snippets that Timothy suggests, which are the ones that we just saw in a few seconds ago. But it's not only about this. When we'll see that these snippets, none of them are actually fully solving accessibility issues, and we'll see how it's actually not possible today to solve those accessibility issues with JavaScript. We have a full technical explanation down at the bottom of the article. I hope that we get there later. But yeah, we'll see that JavaScript is not the solution to solve, to make a system that has a bad base from the beginning to make it accessible. And then also using EMs and scaling and linearly scaling with BWs has a bunch of issues also that we can see right now here in this list. Some of them are just mild inconveniences. Some of them are things that are like a double-edged blade that can actually have a huge impact in your project, and you need to be aware of. So do you want to go through these ones, Joe? Or we'll see later? I think you're scrolled to
sure. We're not. I don't think we want to go through every single section.
Yeah.
Timothy Ricks. This is really just this is what the system is. It's just the facts. You can go to Timothy Ricks' channel and learn about this. Everything is based on an artboard size. It runs calculations, and every single time that you need to size something on the site, you have to use the PX to EM converter, and you have to convert that value into the proper EM value. So there's a lot of calculations, and these calculations are not always clean. Sometimes there's a lot of digits in it. Sometimes they're what seems to be very random numbers. So this is how it works. And we have a list of all the available units. All the ones that use EM in this list do need that calculation. So we talk a little bit more about this. If you are interested in this, please make sure you read it. It's really educational.
Yeah, one thing that we point out in this article is that because all your calculations are based on an artboard size, let's imagine that you first start designing your website for 1440. But then in the future, the design specs change, and you need to change this artboard size. Now, the entire project's calculations are going to change because they are based on this artboard size. So you will have to go one by one to each single class, to each single unit value, to each single size value to change it because the artboard size changed. So this is one big thing to point out.
Yeah, and maybe let's contrast that, because the rest of this section goes into these various calculations and how calculating with the EMs, and really how the EMs can then be affected by their child container sizes and different things. The parent elements. So again, that could impact calculations down the chain, which could again, these are the layers of complexity that become difficult to understand if you're not first of all familiar with the method and also that specific instance of the method. And so this goes through in details, but let's explain how client first and why REMs. This is why EMs versus REMs has been a big question amongst the community. So maybe this is a good time to talk about client first in REMs, and then maybe talking just a little bit about the value one versus the other there.
Sure. The first thing to understand, it's that client first is not a fluid design building technique. That's the first line there. It's important. We're not building our site to be fluid responsive. We're building our site with the best practices, and then we have the option to scale it with CSS at any point in that process. Client first, it's a system. It's a way to name things. It's a way to organize your page, and all of that happens in one unit, REMs. And if we scroll down a little bit, we can use our fluid responsive tool, the fluid generator, to go and generate CSS, not JavaScript, that will then go and make our REM-based site scale. And REMs by default are accessible. By default, it is a referenced value, and that reference can be the browser font size settings. So everything is tied to that. We're going to get a lot more into that. But the way that I like to see this tool is a way to change how the site scales, how the site becomes fluid throughout any breakpoint. And yeah, if you haven't used this tool on a client first build, you got to try it. It's really, really, really simple.
Yeah. I want to bring up a point here. Eric Mueller brings up a good point here. It should be mentioned that Wizardry has an extension that does the calculation for you. I don't know enough about that extension to know whether it's going to update that calculation if you do the artboard resize like Alex was saying. So,
I won't.
Yeah, and I don't believe there's much of a UX on that extension. It's kind of like just doing the calculation in the field. So it's one of those like in the moment you can enter and it'll do the calculation for that specific thing right there, and set that parameter for the artboard. I believe is how that works.
Yeah.
So
I would love to comment on that.
Yeah, sure, Joe.
Yes, absolutely. There's an extension, and if you're using Wizardry, great. Now you can use Wizardry a lot faster. That's great for you. One of the core things about this objective part was that it's all about the next person. It could be the client, it could be another developer, it could be your friend, it could be anybody. And I'm not confident that that extension is going to help somebody who doesn't know Wizardry to go and make those calculations still. It's not going to save my Wizardry experience for me.
Nice. Okay. Let's jump back into the mix here. So, and the other thing is that this is available also inside of the Finsweet extension. So again, all of these, and there's a nice UI on how to set this fluid responsive stuff up. But the point that we made earlier that client first is, let's see, where is that one? Nope, this one. That it's a building technique, right? So it's not like it starts from the foundation, right? Like just like we were talking about, client first is the foundation, just like Babas says here. Even client first is one of the few things that I can only think of that provides positives, no negatives. Been using naming conventions, etc. Like this is it, right? So client first is the foundation. Fluid responsive works with or without it. Wizardry, you kind of have to take into account as you play throughout the entire thing. And so again, there's just that a little bit of added complexity that goes back to the point of client first. The whole purpose is to be able to hand the site off to somebody who is maybe learning Webflow or just getting the hang of Webflow, or maybe like looking to, again, unify how they work with Webflow across the system. And so we're always going to come back to the value of all the things that we do kind of fall into that category, because this is how we operate here. Like all the sites we build at Finsweet, we hand off. You know, we don't host sites for clients. We don't keep them in-house. You know, now we're starting to do maintenance agreements with companies, but for the most part, the sites get handed off. And that's why, you know, this philosophy lies at the root. And client first for us is not just this naming system. It's like the philosophy we operate as a business here. So anyway, that's why we're going to keep coming back to that, the value of client first in that regard.
And one thing that I would like to, the last message from Pablo Cortez, he's saying, is a fluid responsive style generator accessible without client first? And yes, because the base of everything is that we're using REMs. It doesn't matter namings. It doesn't matter any other thing. We're just based on REMs. And the accessibility and how the system works when setting up the Fluid add-on on top of it, it's just because of REMs. So it could work. It could totally work with another system that it's not client first. And this shows the difference between what's the actual system and what's the Fluid add-on on top of it, which is not related 100%.
Nice. Yeah, and Tony's got a good point here. I come from a technical software background, and client first is awesome to see in the Webflow community. Structure is so important when multiple people touch the project. That's it. And as this stuff gets bigger and bigger, right? Like if you're just a solo shop and you're just building sites for you, or, you know, a couple clients here and there, you know, this stuff is not really important to you. When this stuff becomes more and more important is when you need to hire other people to start working on these sites with you. When you're scaling your agency out, and now you maybe have 3, 4, 5 different devs that are touching any project at any given time. Or again, when you're working closely with a large marketing team at an organization who they have 3 or 4 people who need to get into those sites. And so as you want to grow and scale, these systems become more and more important. And, again, we're going to go back to that's why client first is so valuable to us, and why we hope so many, and not why we hope, but why we see so many other people finding value in that same type of system. Okay.
Nice. Okay, let's continue down. We'll keep talking about how the REMs work, how the size scaling works. So this, let's stop right here. REM stands for root EM, which means that its value is relative to the website's root element, the HTML tag. This is super cool. When you read this entire article, I think you're going to understand a lot more about how we can put the size in the user's hand based on their preferences. This is such a beautiful thing. Knowing that somebody can zoom, knowing that somebody can have browser settings is really important. And REM, its relation is to that. That's what it relates to. So by using REMs, we are putting the full power in the hands of the users, which is the accessibility practice.
Yeah.
So that's like something I learned as we were developing this. It's a wonderful thing.
Let's answer this question too from Nikena here. Just to be clear, the difference from an accessibility perspective is that REM is better to use than EM, because from what I'm hearing, it's a matter of these scaling units and not the actual conventions. Alex, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So both REM and EM, they both react to some parent font size. In the case of REM, it just reacts to the root font size, the HTML font size, which usually it's the font size that you have in your browser settings. EMs can be accessible, and actually are accessible out of the box. I can say right now, EMs are accessible unless the font size of the parent is not accessible, because EMs are based on the font size of the parent element and not the root element, which is the browser. In this case, this is the main difference between what Client First does, which is just using REMs across the whole project, and Wizardry that's using EMs, but with a body font size of 1 VW. In that case, all EMs are inheriting this font size, and it's not accessible out of the box because of that.
Nice. So hopefully that was clear to everyone. But yeah, that root element there, you set it at the parent level. So when you go into your all bodies tag or whatever, and you set that root element at 16 pixels, let's say, now that becomes 1 rem. The EMs would be accessible, except for in Wizardry, they set that root element to the 1 VW. And because that 1 VW is your screen width, there's no reference. It's always going to be that 1 VW, which you get into some of the zoom settings, and that's where it becomes inaccessible. It's in that moment where that root inherited property is just referencing that VW, which again is only going to be as wide as your viewport. So hopefully that clarifies anything. Joe, any other extra thoughts there?
That's it. Let's scroll down to a table, and then we'll get into the accessibility stuff a little bit further down here, a little bit further down. Yep, keep going. Next table. Here we go. Okay, so this table is a view of the equivalent of pixels, and then Client First and REM, and then Wizardry at different container sizes. You can see there is a lot more unity in this Client First side. It follows this 4-point system that we can go 1, 1.25, 1.52, 2.5, where on the other hand, Wizardry, the calculated values seem to be random. This is not a value that I have fresh in my head, ready. When I open up a project, I'm ready to go and compute. And again, I'm going to address this. I see more in the comments, people saying there is an extension in Wizardry that lets you do it in Webflow Designer. That's great if you're a Wizardry user. But if you're coming into a Wizardry project without that, I don't know how to use that extension. There's no UI. There's nothing for me to understand why I need that calculation. So it's a clear difference here, looking at the level of simplicity of your size units. And let's continue going down to start browser font size settings.
Well, and this is one of those things that you learn over time, right? As looking with this 4-point system, it starts clicking like, oh, I'm just working in quarter increments, and it builds consistency. So now when I come back to an element and I see, you know, this 1.25, I click that. I'm like, okay, I'm by quarter increments here, or by half increments, or whatever it is. Whereas here, there's no, you know, that's you just don't, not going to remember that. So if I come to a thing and I see like, oh, 1.46, I don't know. Do I need to reset my pixel container? Do I need to my you know, my core size here, my artboard size, or whatever it's called? So like that's where this gets confusing in a lot of ways. So just harping on that, like look at some of these values. You know, how are you gonna? I don't know. Okay, sorry.
Nice. Yeah, it's true. Okay, so Alex, please take this away. Browser font size settings. What is it? Why is it important?
Yeah, sure. This whole section about accessibility, it's based on I don't know how to say it, BWCAG guidelines. It's probably how you would say it. There's one specific success criterion that states that users should be able to scale up your website at least up to a 200%. Okay. We have two ways of doing that. We have the way of zooming in with just your mouse wheel, or by clicking the plus sign, or you can just do it from the browser settings. You can zoom in the website. And the other option that you have is you go inside your appearance settings in your browser, and you can change the default font size of your pages, of your browser itself. All pages are going to load with that default font size. We should try to always respect both. Legally speaking, if you just comply with one of them, you're technically allowed to do it in terms of legally speaking. But let's remember that accessibility is not about complying with laws. It's about respecting users. It's about respecting everyone. That's what accessibility means. So in this case, unless we're not supporting everyone, being that they zoom in or they change their font size settings of the browser, we're actually not being accessible at all. Nowadays, maybe you could legally be okay, but maybe in the future you won't, because accessibility, as I said, it's about supporting everyone. So yeah, we can start seeing why Wizardry is not accessible, and we'll say the facts and explain everything.
Yeah. Do we mind if we answer a couple questions here that I think might be good just to clarify in general here? So Eric is asking again, can't you have the client first HTML structure and naming system but change rems to ems and use Wizardry? If so, wouldn't that help with working with teams and handoff? Alex, I think that may be a good...
Well, you will still have all the problems, accessibility problems, the unit sizing problems would be still the same. Anybody that jumps in the project that doesn't know how to make the calculations would have the same problems. EM units not being consistent, same problems. Again, we're comparing how both systems work, but the naming, it's up to you. Client first has a clear naming. But we're not saying that because of the naming, our system is better than others, or is accessible because of the naming.
Yeah,
it's just something that goes with the system, but it doesn't change any other thing.
Yeah. And then Pablo's following up here with another one. Can we apply the fluid responsive to headings on the style generator, or does it only apply to the body font size, or do we have them manually? So this is where you need to understand that you're setting the size with rems. So your headings would be set in rems, and this is affecting what that core body size is through the different breakpoints. So that's what that little responsive generator is doing. So it's not applying anything specifically to a heading or to any other class. It's just changing what the default pixel size is, what that body pixel size is at those different breakpoints, which the rem then uses as a reference to figure out how big it should be. So in client first, you build all your elements with rems, and that's why that thing allows you to scale as you adjust those breakpoints in that generator. I don't know if that answered the question fully, but
yeah. Can I just say one more thing about this?
Sure.
Also? Because one thing that I missed about the success criterion of the guidelines, accessibility guidelines, is that when the user zooms in, when the user scales up the website, the website should always still be legible, usable. So the layout should still be, it should still make sense. It should not be a break. If you took just specific elements and added fluid responsive to those elements and not the rest of the site, what it would happen is that your site would not scale consistently. So when you would zoom in, things might scale, but then the elements that have the fluid responsive might scale differently. And in that case, your layout could potentially break. So in that, it's something dangerous to do, and that's why we try to be consistent, just scaling the whole site and not specific elements.
Yeah. Joe, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it.
Great. And then hold up. You know, there's the 100 mark. What's up, everybody? Thanks for hanging with us. But every time we hit 100, you know, we got to blast the air horn there. So Felix is saying these award sites don't seem to care much about accessibility. Yeah, I think those, again, are just like pieces of art. We've talked about this a number of times where a lot of those sites are, that's not to say that they're not accessible or that they can't be or that they're not getting better at being accessible or that over time the sites that win awards won't become more accessible. But yeah, for a long time, and even Webflow, like in a lot of ways, those earlier sites, this is why I think now they're taking such a strong position on accessibility, is it's easy to make sites inaccessible in Webflow. You start slapping all sorts of interactions, you start slapping all sorts of this, that, and the others in there, and it's really easy to do. You can make beautiful things, but you know, a lot of times then, well, does that convert responsive? Does it, you know, get you to the next level from an accessibility standpoint? I don't know, right? And so, yeah, this is what we're talking about here is, again, for production sites. It's for marketing companies. It's for people who are trying to build systems around using the web as a part of their business, which means this is churn and burn stuff, right? We're building pages on the fly. We've got, you know, bunches of people working in this. We've got different departments that may need to be touching the website. This is client first. This is like practical use stuff. So yeah, Isaac, that's a good point. And I think that'll change over time, but I just keep coming back to that. This is about production sites that are being used in the day-to-day operation of businesses rather than some of these award sites, which are usually just flashy, hey, look at me. And then that site pulls you into something that's fully accessible, which is their main site. It's their core property kind of thing. So yeah, good point there, but just wanted to clear a little bit about that. Joe, any other thoughts? Alex, any other thoughts there? Should we keep going here?
No, that's fine.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. And Nicola, I see your question here. We'll answer that here in a second. We'll answer that in the next comment break here.
Would love to. Let's move on to the font size for Wizardry and how that is handled.
Yeah. So, well, we in this section we explain why the VWs do not react to any font size changes on your browser settings. The main reason, it's what I explained before, is that one VW is always going to match your screen size. It doesn't matter your browser font sizes. So as we scroll down, we will see what happens when using Wizardry out of the box without any JavaScript snippet. You will see that in this video, the user is changing the browser font size, but nothing is happening on the website. When you're changing the browser font size, what you want to do is to scale up the website to see bigger. And in this case, nothing happens because of the VWs. Now, Wizardry has 3 options to try to solve these issues, as we stated before. And I think we can go one by one through all of them. Yeah, let's go to just option 1. The first option, what it's going to do is that it's just going to take whatever screen size you're on right now, and it's going to convert the body font size from BW to rems. So out of the box, yeah, this JavaScript snippet is just getting rid of BWs, just setting up rems. So you're already doing more work to do the same that you would be doing without BWs. But and in this case, when setting the font size to a fixed rem value based on the screen, changing the browser font size works. because now we are no longer basing all EMs of your project to any to any value that's VWs. Now, I don't know if you can see it correctly here, but the body font size now has become REMs. We'll see later when we go into zooming that this method, that this JavaScript snippet does not solve zooming. And there are a bunch of issues because of that, but we'll dive deeper later. I don't know if Joe or Reimer, do you want to add something else here?
I think we're good.
No, keep going. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, cool. But one issue that you're going to have in here is, and you can see it in this video, is that the JavaScript, it's changing the 1VW for REMs. But JavaScript does not run until your page has loaded. So what happens if you have your browser settings changed to any higher value? While JavaScript has not run, your browser, your font size won't be reacting to the browser settings because it's still VWs. Once the JavaScript code runs, then it changes for a fixed RAM value, and this RAM value works, finally works with the browser font settings. In this video, you can see that what's happening here is there's layout shifting because of that. But this is based on a fast network. If we scroll down a little bit, we'll see that what happens with a slow network. In this simulated slow network, things are slower when loading. So we need to wait. We first load the site, and we see it based on VWs. So we wait, and we wait. And when few seconds have passed, then the JavaScript finally loaded, and what happened? Everything shifted. So imagine your user using the site and then suddenly having this shift that messes up everything for him. This is a huge impact on user experience.
Yeah. I want to.
So even though that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to answer one question here from Spencer, who's saying this part confuses me. If I want an element, example hero image, to always cover the width of the viewport, but I'm not supposed to use VW, how do I do that with REM? That's not the same issue here. You could still have inside of your project a container or an element that respects the VW. That's just not going to scale. And what this is talking about is that the core root element that it's scaling against is the VW, so there's no reference for it to scale against. If you use then your heading, right, you could use a section that's 100 VW and as a container, and then if you're heading inside of there set to REMs, the container is still going to be 100 VW, right? So you'll still get that property, but the heading inside of it will then scale with the rest of the site, and your other images, if they're set to REMs, will also scale proportionately. So I don't know if I explained that properly, Alex, but yeah.
VW is still fine when you want to achieve layouts that are based on your screen. I mean, like, I want half of the screen. I want the entire screen. I want a portion of the screen. That's fine. There are layouts, there are elements that you can build with that. But you should not be scaling your font size, your heading, your anything that it's meant for fluid responsive and not for taking up a portion of the screen.
Yeah, great. Let's see if any of these. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's continue through the options here. Yep. We have, I want to make sure that we hit all the browser settings and all of the other things. So let's jump. Option 2 now. This is the second option example in the browser font settings section.
I think you're no longer sharing your screen.
Yep. There we go.
Yep. Yeah. So shall I continue? Do you want to take over?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the option 2. This JavaScript snippet, the only thing that it's doing is checking whether the user is zooming in or not. And in that case, it replaces again the body font size for a fixed RAM value, for one RAM value. So in that case, browser font size, it won't work because if you're not zooming in, you still have one VW on the body, nothing is reacting. And also, one thing that we point out in this section that it's something to be aware of. There was one video of Wizardry of Timothy Ricks where he was saying that when zooming in, it should be linearly scaling. And he was saying, obviously, our system, you will see later that it's not exactly linearly scaling while zooming in. But this system, it's not anyways. And if you scroll down, and by the way, it's not a bad thing. Just keep in mind, it's not a bad thing to not linearly scale when zooming in. But we'll see that when we zoom in this section, look what happens on the first zoom. Oops, Raymond, I think you're on the wrong section. This is the third
option 3. Option. Do we have a video on option 2 here?
Oh no, okay. It's in the zooming section, so we can skip that for now. Okay. We'll see it later. But we'll see that zooming is still having some issues.
Okay.
Let's go right ahead in the option 3. The option 3, it's I don't know why this option exists, but basically this it's replacing the entire controls of the browser and just adding some buttons on the page that let you zoom in and out when clicking on them. They're zooming in and out. Again, it's replacing the body font size for a fixed RAM or EM value. I don't remember which one was it, but it doesn't make any sense. This approach was being used 10 years ago when Internet Explorer 6 was still on the market. 10 years ago, maybe let's say 15 years ago. Because in that case, there were still some browsers that didn't have zooming included in the browser features itself. So users needed some kind of custom JavaScript to achieve zooming. But nowadays, this is nonsense. I mean, it's replacing entirely the regular zooming, the browser font settings, everything. It just doesn't make any sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's now contrast those 3 options with the client first method. So we'll be talking browser font size with client first. Alex?
Yeah, okay. So we said before, RAMs are based on the root font size. So if you change your browser font settings, this root font size, it's tied to it. So you can see in this video that everything automatically reacts, no matter if you're using Fluid or if you're not using Fluid. One thing that we will see in this video, and I don't know no, it's not this video, so we can skip it. But for now, you can see that everything reacts correctly to the changes of the browser font settings. Correct. This is the video that I wanted to show. One of the key points of Fluid Responsive on top of Client First, it's that it's not only based on RAMs, but it still has a portion of VWs. And bear with me, there's a reason for that. And there are reasons why this is being used and why it can be accessible if used correctly. But first, let's analyze what's happening in this video. Can you restart the video?
Yep.
Yeah. So let's see for a second. First, what's happening on a client first side that has not the Fluid Responsive add-on. Can you pause for a second here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's check the header. The header, it's showing the computed size of it. So you can see that without changing the browser font size, it was 40 pixels. But then when we change the browser font size to the large option, I think it was, then it changes to 50 pixels. Okay, but now let's see what happens with the Fluid add-on. If you just play the video and we'll see that when using the Fluid add-on, instead of going from 40 to 50, we go from 40 to 48. So something happened in there, right? The reason for that, we'll explain it later, but it's because there's a portion of the calculation that it's based on the screen size. It's using VWs. And this screen size, when you change the browser font settings, it's not changing because the screen size is still the same one. So a portion of this value, it's going to remain like it was before. So the key point of all of this is that this system must be used correctly. Any system, you can break a site when not applying things correctly. In this case, you can break your site with when applying. You cannot break your site, but you can make your site not accessible if you don't apply it correctly for responsive. Don't worry, because it's very easy to do. It's not something that you need to be prepared for it. And we'll show it here. But one of the main conversation that we'll have now, it's about why is this happening and why it can be accessible anyways. We can move on, or we can answer comments, or you can jump in.
I was just pointing out a couple comments there about trying Wizardry, and the complexity, in addition to also learning Webflow, can be, and we talked about, like, Webflow is not easy in and of itself. And so adding, the more complexity you add, we talked about at the beginning, reducing the learning curve. How can you make things easier to not just pick up, but then to understand when you jump into somebody else's work? That's the stuff we're focusing on. Okay. Let's keep going, because I think we're gonna get tight on time here.
Yeah. So, well, here in this section, we just explain why this is happening, but we'll dive deeper into these later. But for now, we can just show you that scaling your site, it's still accessible, because we want to achieve a 200% scaling at a minimum, and we can achieve it without no problem at all. We will see later that even the tool, the generator tool, it's going to warn you whenever you're using values that you should not be using, because they might not be accessible. But we have the demonstration of that later. I think we can dive into the user zooming already. So same criterion. We need to achieve 200% scaling. Wizardry out of the box without JavaScript, you cannot zoom in because of the BWs. But let's see the three options that Wizardry offers to see why they work or they don't work. In the first case, we have the first option that's changing the body font size for a fixed RAM value depending on the screen size. Okay, in this case, zooming, it's not going to be enabled. You will not be able to zoom until you break out of the container that's fully responsive. I think I should explain first how zooming works.
And so this is why, if y'all were watching at the beginning, by the way, this is why it was breaking out after the 200%, right?
Yes,
on my zoom.
correct.
So now if you're watching and you're like, hey, but it's zooming now after 200%. Okay, this is where we're going to explain that.
Yeah, correct. So when you're zooming in, you're not only scaling up things in your page, you're actually changing your media query. And we can imagine it as we zoom in, and now let's say, for example, we have a screen of 1,000 pixels. So let's do round values so it's easier to understand. And we zoom in 200%. In that case, now the browser is going to treat the screen as it was 500 pixels, but those 500 pixels were stretched to cover the entire 1,000 pixels. So it's like we're doubling everything because we have a screen size of 500 pixels, but we are maxing it to cover the screen that was 1,000 pixels. But when doing this, the browser is changing the media query also. It's not only scaling things, it's changing the media query. Now, Wizardry, the fluid responsive of Wizardry goes from a range of, usually it's 9091 to your container size, like usually 1920, for example. So there's a range in here that it's fluid. And when you break out of this range from the top or from the bottom, then the CSS just changes and it's no longer fully responsive because the body font size, it's set to a fixed RAM value or EM value, whatever. So that's why when zooming in, until we break out of this container, we cannot zoom in. You will see here in this video, we start zooming in 110, 125 in a second, 150, 175. And it's not until 200% because it's breaking out of the container. This is depending on your screen size, that things are going to be scaling up. Remember, I don't know if we said it, but in browsers, there are some browsers that you can only zoom until 300%. So in this case, this means that you only have from 200 that you were not able to zoom up to 300, which is just a 100% to achieve a double scaling. And we can see later that it doesn't work anyways. So you can zoom in, you won't achieve the 200 scaling because of that. So first option, you cannot zoom in, not accessible.
Yeah. I want to just a couple comments here. Caleb, learning from Wizardry definitely helped me understand the possibilities of Webflow, but the biggest issue for me was that it makes it much less intuitive for clients to understand. 100%. And I think if you really listen, if you're a student of Webflow, go learn Wizardry. Go understand how this thing works so that you understand why maybe things don't, like this is part of the process. You got to go explore. You got to go tinker, learn client first, learn a little bit of this, go play with that, go experiment, and then figure out what works best for your workflow. Again, like we talked about this, you may have different use cases. Eric's saying something here. It may not be best for Ally, but it's pretty cool to see that your design looks exactly the same in all sizes. Control freak in me likes that a lot. Yes. Okay. I understand that. And if it's just a beauty pageant, then that's no big deal. But if you're truly looking for accessibility, if you're truly looking for scalability, if you're truly looking for, again, to be able to hand this thing off for other folks to be able to use, these things come into play. And they become really important when you're dealing with clients who maybe have legal liabilities due to accessibility or who have higher requirements for some of this stuff. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of that's the gist here. It's like there's nothing wrong with the Wizardry system as far as a tool that, build beautiful websites with. That's not in dispute. The question is, are you trying to hit that next level of compliance, of accessibility, of scalability, and usability long term? That's the questions you have to ask.
And actually, if you want linear scaling, you can do it still with Fluid Responsive, but the tool is going to warn you that you're applying non-accessible values.
There you go.
So you can still achieve that, but the tool won't respect you for that.
Give you a tisk.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to option 2. Option 2 is the one that was changing the body for a fixed RAM value when you zoom in. In this case, it kind of works, but the JavaScript snippet that Timothy adds on the documentation, it's actually wrong. So we try to fix it so the comparison, it was fair. So we fixed that script, but later in the article, we show that actually, even though we fixed the script, we cannot make it work correctly because there's no solution with JavaScript to this. But basically what happens is that when you zoom in, the script kind of detects it in some cases, in other ones, it does not. That's why it's not accessible. But then it changes the font size for a RAM value, and then you can zoom in because RAM value, now you can zoom in. The problem comes when, zooming is not linear because changing from your screen size to a fixed RAM value that was not based on your screen size, then there's a change on that. And we can see it in this video. If you just move it back, you will see that first we have this. And when the first zoom that we perform, just a few seconds, if you can see, it made a jump to be, can you repeat that for a second?
Yep. Just trying to get it to catch up here.
Yep. That's probably, okay.
Has it happened before that? It's like from the 110 to 125?
Yeah, give me a second. Can you just let it run? Maybe it's not this video. Yeah, correct. I don't know if it's this video, but what's going to happen is that zooming it's not linear.
Yeah.
Because there's a jump between your screen size, font size that was based on your screen size, sorry, and the fixed RAMs that the JavaScript snippet adds on top of it. But yeah, I think we can move on because I need to leave in 13 minutes. That's why I'm trying to be fast explaining everything. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, well, let's go. Let's just jump to the option 3.
Option 3, it's the same one as before. We just have those buttons and it's overriding everything from the browser. You cannot zoom in, you cannot change browser font settings. It's just not accessible at all. It doesn't make sense to even have this option. You can just skip through that.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And well, here we can show client first. You can zoom in, no problem at all. It all depends on your scaling settings. And this is where I want to reach. But client first, you can zoom in, you can change your browser font settings, and you can always achieve a 200% scaling if you follow the fluid design generator warnings.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just accessible. And the section that I want to get is the size scaling RAM plus VW, because this is the interesting part. This is the part where we get a little bit technical.
Wait, so hold up. The rest of this hasn't been interesting? You're saying everybody out there is asleep?
We're just starting now.
Come on now. Don't make me get the air horn out here, okay? Here we go. They're excited. They're excited. They're excited. They're excited. Okay, let's go.
About scaling using RAM and VWs, what the generator does when it lets you choose your scaling with the graph, it's actually just tweaking up a portion of the BW in a formula. So your font size is going to scale differently depending on your settings, okay? As we stated before, RAMs are the ones that are accessible, are the ones that react correctly to zooming, to changing your browser font settings. VWs are the ones that are not. But we can make a mix of both, and as long as we're careful to not be basing the screen, the font size too much on the screen instead of the RAM values, which are the ones that are coming from the browser, you will be always able to achieve a 200% scaling. Browsers can zoom up to 300%, so there's this difference where we can work. And browsers let you change your font settings up to 4 times the original size. So with this range of values, we can play around and we can try to tweak it to make sure that you can scale up and down with this portion of VW, but you can still achieve the 200% scaling, which is the one that it's in the guidelines and everyone should be able to achieve. So I think we can skip through the more technical part about how the calculations are done. If you're curious about it, we explain it so you can make the calculations yourself. But basically what's happening is that in your graph, you're just changing based on your screen size, the value of 1 RAM. 1 RAM equals to 16 pixels out of the box, but maybe at some screen size, you want to increase that. So everything scales up or scales down depending on the graph, the settings of the graph. So if we go down a little bit, just a little bit more, here's the famous formula for that, where we calculate the exact output of the RAM plus VW. So you can calculate it yourself if you like maths, but we do it for you.
There's a rule of streams here. We just showed equations and our stream numbers went from 140 to 12. Now there's only 12 people watching.
Sorry, this became a math class, but
I'm kidding.
It's a simple equation.
It's cool to go through here and just look and see what all's happening, right? So for those who want the deep dive, there's lots of stuff in these articles that you should definitely go explore.
Yeah, correct. But as we said, as long as your scaling, it's not too prominent, it's not too harsh, everything is going to work correctly. Now, what the specific situations that you want to avoid, it's when you're scaling so much between a small range of screen sizes. So let's imagine that, for example, you have 16 pixels at 1000 pixels screen size, okay? And then you decide that at 1200, so at 1200 pixels screen size, you want to have the double. So everything should just bump up like crazy when you go between these small range of values. In that case, what we need to do to bump to make this huge scaling is to make the VW portion of the equation very high, because we need to base everything on the screen size and not on a RAM value. And I think we can see it later later on the article that it's explained. But basically, this is what we want to achieve: low scaling between high difference of breakpoints. As long as you're not doing a big scaling between two breakpoints that are very close together, you're always going to be accessible. So as long as you're in the good, or very good range, you're always going to be accessible. No problem at all. And the tool, it's going to tell you if there is some scaling that you're applying, and the tool is, because it has some internal logic to check that. If the tool sees that your values will not be accessible because of that, it's going to warn you. And I think we have video for that down below. Yeah, this is just a scaling. I think it is in here. Yeah, you'll see that it warns you. It's saying, hey, be careful, because this scaling, users might not be able to achieve the 200 scaling that should be able to do when zooming in or changing the browser font size. So as long as you don't see any warnings in your tool, you're accessible. Just use Climb first. Just change whatever you want. You're accessible. No one is going to lawsuit you.
This is not legal advice. Alex Iglesias is not a lawyer, and you should check with all legal counsel before applying all fluid responsive on your websites for accessibility purposes. Okay, bye.
Sorry about that. But okay. I'm not saying anything of that, but I'm just saying as a friend that, this tool is going to take care of you. So yeah, I think that just sorry if I'm talking too much, but I would like to just say a couple more things before I leave. And it's that Wizardry is trying to be accessible by applying JavaScript on top of the system. Wizardry is not accessible out of the box. We already said it because of the BW scaling. And it's trying to patch this flawed design system with JavaScript on top of it. But the thing is that on this section, we actually prove that there is no JavaScript solution that can fix this system totally. The reason is because if you want to support zooming, you need to detect zooming with JavaScript. You need to know how the user has zoomed in on the page to be able to modify the body font size to a fixed RAM value that maintains this fluid responsive scaling. But the problem we have is that there is actually no reliable way of knowing how much a user has zoomed in on a page. You can go through this section, but all of the solutions that you will find in Google, they all have problems. Retina screens affecting, you can just scroll down a little bit, but Retina screens are being treated differently. So some properties like the bias pixel radio, you cannot use them. Safari is not supporting them. Other systems like checking the difference between the outer screen size and the window of the browser, they don't work in Firefox. There's a skin API that only works on mobile. There's a visual viewport API that only shows you when you're pinching, not zooming with systems. Like, there are a lot of ways that people are trying to make this work. But I can tell you, because I've spent so many hours trying to fix it myself, there's no way nowadays. I'm saying this today, 18th February 2022. Maybe this changes in 5 years. But nowadays, there's no way to make a system like Wizardry fully accessible with JavaScript. There's no way. You can try to patch it as many times as you want. You can try to fix something here, fix something there, but there's always going to be a flaw. There's always going to be a problem, because linear scaling, it's not accessible. You cannot linearly scale nowadays without creating accessibility issues, and that's why a flow generator is going to always warn you when you're trying to achieve scalings that you should not be doing because they are not accessible. So just follow along with the generator, and if there is a warning and you want to be serious about accessibility, just do not scale that much. And that's it. That's my conclusion.
Yeah. Nice. And I think that's probably a good out point. So any final thoughts there you want to share before we let you out of here?
No, I think I said everything. One thing that I'm going to tell is I'm leaving, but I'm picking up my mobile phone so I can still answer things in the comments.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do here.
If there is any question,
yeah, leave your.
If there's any question, just I'll try to answer it. Okay.
Yep. Cool. Leave any thoughts you have in the comments here. Yeah, actually, it's funny. We could go ahead.
No, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that same link works on your browser, if you want to take on the road. But no, we don't have to do that. I'm just kidding. But we will answer some questions here. There's been a lot of questions coming in. So as Alex heads out, we're going to run through and answer some of these questions. We'll come to a conclusion on the article here. I think there's a couple final points we want to make. And then it looks like that little preview we gave you on the folders is going to be maybe all the preview we get into. Maybe we'll do a dedicated video and we can maybe release that as a little teaser, or maybe Tuesday that'll be ready for a full spectrum release. So feel free to leave your comments here. We're going to jump into that. Alex, take care. We'll catch you a little bit later. Thanks for joining us there, everyone who's hanging with us. Let's see, we still got 140 folks hanging around. So let's see what's up in these comments. Joe, any thoughts here before we get into any of that?
Yeah, that was a nice overview of this article. And if you are interested in this topic, if you really want to understand what Alex is talking about, read this article. Alex was the primary author of it. He has become an expert in this field by preparing this article. He was already an expert. Now he's a super expert. So read this. It's really, really educational. And I want to say again that this is our response to a question. We're not just saying, hey, we're posting this randomly. We are getting this question almost daily. How does Wizardry compare to Client First? And we have to give an answer. We had the subjective part on top. That's not an appropriate answer to just give and then walk away. So we made this objective walkthrough. And this is our official response. That's how I like to put this. If you have a question, what's the difference between Wizardry and Client First? I'm going to send you this link. This is our official response to that question. And that's why we made it. That's why we spent 6 weeks doing this. Unfortunately, yesterday, we had the same level of detail and the same level of technical knowledge in our JetBoost review, but we could not release that. We could not go over that. If you missed that stream, go back to it. But yeah, today, this is it. This is our response. Reimar, what did I miss? What questions do we have?
Not much. So Caleb was asking yesterday, have you released the article from yesterday's stream? Not yet. We didn't want to just yank out the performance stuff and leave the article there kind of like half bare. So we'll release that probably early next week. We're going to go back and make just some tweaks and touch that up. We wanted to be fair to Chris. We explained that on the show yesterday. I think there's been like 2,500 views on that video so far, so go check that out. Both of these questions, so not just the wizardry, but the attributes versus JetBoost stuff, both of these questions are things that we were getting over and over and over and over and over. And instead of piecemealing those answers, instead of typing out some half-baked thing, we wanted to do, hey, full hour dedicated to answering these things. Anytime somebody asks, we can either send them to a timestamp, we can send them the video if they want to dive in deep, we can send them the article. And so now we have all the content we need to kind of review and address this. And if things change, we'll update that as we go, right? So as we saw yesterday, we had a plan, things change in a hurry, and so we adapted on the fly. We will continue to adapt. That's one thing we're good at here at Finsweet, is moving fast. And so, yeah, let's jump into a couple of these questions, Joe. How do accessibility practices account for older tools, browsers, etc.? The digital divide is an inherent part of access. I don't know how much it is considered. That's tough. It's tough to think about backwards compatibility on all these things. Obviously, you saw, Explorer support is out. It's like things deprecate on the web. WordPress is running into all sorts of serious problems with backwards compatibility, trying to make sure that next year's version of WordPress works with 15 years ago version of WordPress. So I don't know. This is always going to create conflict. It's like accessibility buildings for handicapped folk. If you have a building that was built in the 50s versus a building that was built in 2000, right? The building built in 2000 is going to be probably a lot more accessible for handicap needs than the building built in the 50s. There's not a lot you can do. You can try to retrofit. You can go back and put handles in the bathroom. You could like build ramps, but it's so hard, you know, to fully go back. And so there's always going to be that issue. I'm not sure that's a problem we're going to solve. And even now, as you see people building things that are not fully accessible, it's still a problem. So I don't know that there's a good answer for that story support.
I'd love to bring up a question from GazT100. So basically, if I use REMS for everything, my site will be responsive and accessible. It can be responsive and accessible. If you follow our guidelines, when that little red circle comes up, you can use that scaling in any way you want. When that red thing comes up, that's saying, hey, the user's not going to be able to zoom past 200%. And for that reason, this is not accessible. So yeah, just follow the alerts. And yes, REMS will be accessible.
And somebody actually asked,
go
ahead.
Let me add this also. This is accessibility for typography and accessibility for content. There's a lot more accessibility. We're not saying like build in client first with this generator and now like everything is automatically accessible. There's a lot of other things, but you are safe and secure with your typography and text content.
Yeah. And these things, I mean, the Webflow audit panel, best practices, studying the documentation, all that stuff. And also keep an eye out. If you're not subscribed, it's another reason to subscribe and keep up with what we're doing, because we have a huge accessibility add-on for attributes, which is coming. There's going to be a ton of things coming with attributes that will help you make your Webflow sites more accessible in addition to all of this, which brings up, where is it? Somebody was saying something about Inception. Where's that comment? GATS 100. Web design has become so Inception-like. We have to design for different screen sizes and heights and widths, and now scaling in and out makes my brain hurt. Yeah, this is crazy. This is so much to think about now as it relates to web design. And this is where I keep going back to that client-first mentality. It's about organizing and creating structure. And so it's really easy to get inside of Webflow and start treating Webflow like Photoshop and naming every element as its own thing and just setting a style and getting, you could get your look. And you could have 10,000 classes, but you could get your look, right? And so that is part of this, is learning how to do it, learning how to structure the things, learning how to get more efficient with the builds. And it becomes like a constant evolution. Like, you know, this just goes back to the episode about it not being easy, because there's always more complexity to add as you go in this space.
Oh, yeah. It really is amazing. It's like you get to the next level and you realize how many things else that you need to account for. And this is one of them. You know, this is part of our growth pattern. This is not something we were looking into last year. We're only now like really getting into this because we got to that next level and now we can understand this.
Yeah. And it just, as somebody who, let's see, I think it's like a year and a half, almost a year and a half or something like that. I've been at Finsweet. It's like a year and 5 months. And I don't build anywhere near as much as when I was like selling websites. And I feel like I'm getting past stuff because I don't practice this stuff. Like I play with it, I learn it, I explore it. I got the extension, I'm playing with client first. But like, if you looked at my stuff, I don't know that I'm effing certified. I don't know that I'm boot camp certified here, right? And so this is something that even, you know, as a steady professional in the space, like you gotta work on it. You gotta like have your hands dirty with this stuff all the time. So
love to bring up a question from Eric Muller.
Okay.
So you're saying you can do the same effect of it being the same size in all sizes, just like Wizardry, with the caveat that if it gets to red, it won't be accessible. Eric, you can set up that scale so that there is linear scaling. Absolutely. And you're going to see that red circle. Yes. We actually built a script that will automatically turn your client-first site into linear scaling. We did it. It works. But we are not releasing it because it is not accessible. And you'll read that in that final section of the article. We cannot put out a solution that is breaking our heart of just being accessibility leaders. So yes, you can achieve the linear scaling with client first. It works. You're just going to lose out on the accessibility.
Yeah. Let's see. There was another question up here at the top that I wanted to ask about. Okay, Hans is asking, are the client-first templates guaranteed, that's a hard word, to work as future Finsweet products are developed and mature? Well, we don't really guarantee anything in the world of web. That's why I made the little tongue-in-cheek disclaimer when Alex was saying it'll be accessible. Yeah, but so yeah, the client-first templates will be built with client-first, and I don't know that we'll go back. Let's say we make an adjustment to client first and update all of those templates retroactively, but we might. I don't know. It depends on how things move. But as of right now, they're built with client first. You could add fluid responsive to them. They will work with attributes and all of the different things coming forward. And this is the same for any site that's built with best practices or with client first, you know, in a true sense. So yeah, we can't guarantee that every little thing that we build in the future will always be compatible with all of these templates, but it's Webflow, right? So like, as long as it works with Webflow, as long as you can build in the designer, you know, like, yeah, probably you can expect that those things will work and be useful for a long time to come.
I'd love to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
This is a good follow-up for that too, though.
Yeah, can you go back to Hans?
Let's see, where is it? Yep.
Okay. So I want to make it clear that we are all in on client first. We are using it for everything. We're using it for our client sites. We're using it for our testing sites, our development environments. We are building applications. We are building full user interfaces completely outside of Webflow in client first, in the mindset and the structure of client first. So yeah, we're all in on it. In terms of guaranteed, yeah, Reimar said we're not guaranteeing anything. We're going to start building things as we release them. And we are always thinking about backwards compatibility. And that's why this Fluid Generator add-on is truly an add-on. You can keep using client first with no changes whatsoever. You never have to use this. Or you can choose to add it. And you can take that same mentality with the templates. You can take any one of our templates, you can put this fluid responsive snippet on top, and you'll probably need 30 minutes or so to go through the site, maybe change some things, update some sizes, and now you have a full fluid responsive template from our resources. So we are really keeping this in mind. The folder that we showed earlier, if you missed the beginning of the stream, make sure you go back to the beginning. We hinted at folders. This is going to be backwards compatible. This is an add-on to the existing system. We're not going to ask you to change the way that you think about client first. We're locked in. So everything has this in mind. Hans, I hope that answers your question.
Nice. Penny saying, I'm definitely going to need to go watch this again while going through the doc. There's so much. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Gats, is there a clonable style guide for client first, which has fluid responsive built in? That's not really built in. It's an add-on. Right, so client first is how you build, and then once you're done with the client first, you can go get the fluid responsive add-on and then add that CSS script to your client first site, and it'll become responsive, fluid responsive, assuming you did everything right in the client first and you used REMs for all your measurements and that everything was set up properly. But that's a good way to cross-check your work, right? That's a good way to cross-check your work. If you're working in client first and you want to go put that fluid responsive add-on, and it does take you more than what Joe was saying there, 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever, to go back through and make some of those adjustments. Maybe you're not, understanding the REMs, and maybe you should go back and kind of figure some of that out. But yeah, the fluid responsive should be able to add on to any properly built client-first website.
And also, we're going to release more of these. This is still relatively new. We're not the fastest at building templates. We start with the documentation, we get some feedback, we spend all of our time looking at it, and now we're ready to go and build out these templates. So I think in the next few months, you'll see more and more of these so we can release official examples.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now, it's an add-on.
Nice. Demetrius is saying, Alex, will you ever do JavaScript or Webflow deep dives and stuff? Actually, he made a tweet the other day asking about how y'all would like to see that kind of content, whether it be short form, live stream, whatever. And so, yes, it's being thought about both on his end personally and what we can do here at Finsweet. So stay tuned for more of that. It does seem like folks are liking the technical deep dive stuff. And so, yeah, we can get into some of that. So Joseph Bates, it's mind-blowing the time, effort, and resources you put into helping the community. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate you. Okay, let's see. Richard Basto, you want to take that one, Joe?
Richard, I'm a huge fan of Wizardry, but it always pays to keep an open mind. Really looking forward to trying to incorporate client first in my next build. Richard, absolutely. Keep an open mind. That's important for any type of web building. There's new tools, there's new processes, there's new technology always coming out. If you are closed-minded in this industry, you're going to be left behind. Yeah. So nice comment here, Richard.
Yeah, Gats is saying same thing. The web changed a lot. Feeling like I'm starting from scratch. Been learning Webflow lately. You're in the right place. This is a good thing to be learning. Story support here too. I'm not a web designer developer, but I am a designer. It's important that if people do stuff, it's done correctly, or at least with some respect. That's what distinguishes professionals. Yeah, that's it. That's why you can charge a lot more money is when you're going through these processes. We talk about all the time. Like these are the value adds that as people want. This is how you build your skill set. This is how you become that true professional, as opposed to just the person who's, just doing a $1,000 website or a couple $1,000 website, like that's how you really, it's like honing your craft and getting really good at this stuff. So.
And let's, I can't help myself but to just jump a little bit on the sales side of this. Mm-hmm. Imagine having a lead that you're talking to showing your past work and they bring up accessibility and you say, I build accessible sites. Let me open up a site. Let me drag my browser font size settings. Let's watch the website update. Let's go and zoom in and out. Let's watch the browser update. You send them some client first documentation, and now that person says, wow, this is accessible. I now saw a preview. It's a huge selling point here. So use this in sales. If you understand this article and you can start to just give a little bit of that technical knowledge to your lead, they're going to love you. They're going to trust you, and they're going to say yes. So important information. Always think about sales. I had to bring it up.
Nice. Okay. Maggie, it kind of breaks my heart, but you convinced me to drop Wizardry. Yeah, I'm sure some of that's going to happen, and I'm sure lots of people will find Wizardry. I'm sure lots of people will, maybe personally they don't like client first or whatever. I don't know. This kind of change happens all the time. Our goal was really just to give the best information we could about why we think one system is better than the other and why we're kind of firmly standing behind what we do. And we explained all the reasons why we're doing that in an article that we released Tuesday. You can go back and find that. Actually, I think I have it here. This Finsweet versus competitor content intro. We did a stream about it on Tuesday that you can check out. We kind of go into why we're doing this content and why we're defending some of this stuff and kind of making this these statements. And so there's these 6 reasons here that I'd encourage anyone to go read if you have any questions about any of that or what our intention was for these streams. So let's see. Hans Lund, Attributes has an API coming out that will enable Google Analytics to integrate with Webflow. When? ? Are there any special conditions we should be aware of when using Google Analytics with client first? Joe, any thoughts on that?
Well, okay. Yes, Attributes does have an API coming out. And when that API does come out, yes, you will be able to send Google Analytics events to Google by any actions that happen inside Attributes. So yes, you will be able to write custom code. You will be able to integrate into what Attributes does. This isn't a Webflow integration. This is not integrating with Webflow as a platform. You're just able to do this process with our API. Nice. And this has nothing to do with client first. Client first is a building and naming convention. It has nothing to do with integrations or the size of the site or the subject of the site.
Nice. Okay, let's see. Pablo Cortez, does the fluid responsive code go straight to the style symbol if using a client first template?
Yeah, that's where I would put it, Pablo. I'd put it right at the top there, and you can update that globally. Especially if you're using the tool for the first time, you'll probably need a couple tries. You're going to try a version and say, oh, this could be improved on the mobile experience. This could be improved here. So yeah, add it to that symbols and just keep it global for your whole project.
And if you're interested in learning more on the client first fluid responsive, I think it was like episode 4 of Learn It Live or something like that. I don't know exactly, but go back on the Finsweet channel and look recently. In the last month or two, we did a deep dive, 2 of them. We did 2 deep dives into fluid responsive, one Joe and I, and one with Harshit I don't remember who was on, Emmanuel. And there was somebody else, I think, too. Alex was on that stream where we kind of talked all about the fluid responsive stuff. So there's 2 deep dives there if you're looking for like the next, level of learning with that. So last couple questions here, and then we're going to wrap out. Penny, I think all the work you're doing is helpful. People want to know more about how it all works. Yeah, I think that's a lot of, we learned so much, like this stuff was helpful for me. Hopefully it was helpful for all of you watching now or listening in the future. If you're listening to this podcast at some point in the future, I'd encourage you to go check out the YouTube just so you can kind of follow along and watch the videos that we were referencing in the article so you can see the visuals of how this stuff takes place. And then, Joe, I'm going to let you take this one from Dale.
Nice. We have from Dale. I really like how tightly you integrate your products within the Webflow platform. It makes so much sense to, as much as possible from a Webflow designer developer perspective. Thank you. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate that. We're trying really hard to do that. We're trying to make anything that we build for you feel as native and natural to use as possible. So that comment is really appreciated.
Yeah. Pablo's maybe got a good point, Joe. This might be an interesting challenge to throw out. Make a free Webflow template, fluid responsive, and make it clonable. I wonder if we could then have people submit to us somehow, and we have like some kind of prize for the best one or something. That might be a fun little thing to do.
Yeah, we should.
Okay.
We put some money on top of that prize pool, and now we have some fun games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? And we have a couple little like, I wish we could tell you more about what's coming because there's things and stuff and whatever. But just tune in, subscribe to the channel, make sure you like these videos. If you're getting value out of this, please. Yeah, it really helps. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think like 50% of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed, which is great because it means Facebook. It means YouTube is kind of putting the video in front of lots of folks, but we'd love to have that subscriber count. We're actually on a path to 10,000 subs. I think we've probably come up a little bit, but we're at like 9,784. Yeah, so we're like real close to 9,800. The goal is, can we get to 10,000 by the end of the month? So if you're not subscribed, if you got any value out of this, please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. We've got tons more content coming up. We're working hard to just, lead the way in a lot of this, helping folks make money in Webflow, pushing the limits of the product itself, and really connecting the community in unique, interesting ways. Last little thing, we got the open house coming up March 24th. So we're for anybody who's still on the stream, let's see, we still got 116 of y'all, so I'm gonna tease this a little bit. We're going to do a worldwide community group photo at the open house. I'm not telling you how it's gonna happen. I'm not saying anything other than that. But I promise you will want to be at this open house. We are going to take a literally worldwide group photo. It's going to be super cool. And that'll happen right after the main keynote, the opening panel. So lots more details coming on the open house. We've been teasing it for a little while. Last year, this was like, one of the Webflow events of the year. It's coming up March 24th. Save the calendar. More details on that coming up soon. So any final thoughts as we close out of here, Joe?
That's it. I'm glad that a lot of people came and said they learned something from this. And that is going to be our continued goal, to continue educating you. So please take the time, watch it again, like Penny said, give a read to the article, get to that next level. That's what we're here for.
Nice. Okay. Enjoy the weekend, everyone. Whatever time it is in the world when you're watching this, we appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Bye. Okay, looks like we're out.